tell us what you mentioned earlier in an earlier conversation, what you called your work out there.
Yeah.
What you did to somebody's ride.
Oh, it's basically like Pimp My Ride for airplanes.
I love it. It's great because
it's-
I can wrap my mind around that, right?
Yep.
Everybody's seen that show somewhere, sometime. Yeah. Well, joining us at the table today is Kyle Dyson, the Chief Operating Officer at Troxell. We sure do appreciate you joining us.
I appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for coming
Thank
in
you guys.
today.
One of the things we've learned with doing this podcast is people, folks see a face, they may know a name, know a company name, but people love to hear people's stories, their journey. And I know you're from Springfield. Just share a little bit about your life story and how you've ended up in the role today at Troxell and some of the stops along the way.
Sure. Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you.
So I was, like you said, born and raised here in Springfield. I think I probably got a start to my kind of my mentality, I guess you'd call it, early in my career. I was a paper boy back in the day, and I remember my dad used to tell me, he said, you have to live by the 1 foot rule. I said, well, I was like, all right, so it has to be within 1 foot of the door or whatever. And he said, no, it has to be within. They should only have to put 1 foot outside of their door.
That's awesome.
And I thought, well, that. Now that I think about it, it makes a difference, right? Because I can put it on within 1 foot, but it's the wrong side of the door. Now they got to walk all the way out and around and grab it, right? So I thought, it kind of changed the way that I look at things, and I think I've always kind of had that mentality where
you could write a book on
Really
that.
good. The 1 foot rule. That is good.
I do like that.
I'm not kidding, man. It changed like the way that I look at stuff. Like I remember I would go to dinner, like I would just analyze everything, and like I'd be out to dinner somewhere, and it's just like a bar type food, right? And they hand you like your silverware in a napkin with a little wrap around it, and there would be someone would give me 2 forks. I'm like, why are they doing 2 forks? They don't serve salads here. Like I would just analyze everything. So.
Well, that explains why you analyze my parking job every morning when you drive by.
Yeah.
He'll come in and let me know that I'm parked over the line or too far up or not in a space.
I'm just looking out for you, Brad.
It's just a picture of his. He likes to color outside the lines a little bit.
Yes, I do.
Here and there.
Sometimes it can be a problem.
No,
that's cool. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, it was a good
one.
one.
So did you, rain, snow, the whole deal?
Oh, all of it, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I always walked it. I was never the kid that wanted to throw everything from the bike or walk through the car,
really?
and throw from the driveway. No, I carried for years, and
Now,
it was
back
always.
then, did you have to collect as well?
Oh yeah, that was the best part.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
I love going door to door and like tearing out the little tab, and that's your receipe.
Yeah.
We need somebody to help us with AR collections.
For sure.
We've got our own issues too.
So from the bicycle or not the bicycle, from walking the paper route to you went to Southeast High School.
Southeast, yep.
And then tell us a little bit about after your high school years.
Yeah, so I went to the Navy out of high school. It was, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had no idea, what I wanted to be when I grew up. And so I thought, well, I can go to school and, spend a lot of my parents' money trying to pay for some college and not get my money's worth because I don't know what I'm doing. And so I said, you know what, I'll just do it myself. And I went to the Navy and always been fascinated by aviation. And so I went to the Navy, worked on airplanes for 4 years, was stationed in Japan on a carrier, and it was phenomenal. I enjoyed everything about it. And the first time I went up to the flight deck, it was like I was hooked.
Oh,
I was like,
right?
The adrenaline,
Sure.
it was intense. So I studied and became our guy for the flight deck, and I could probably still draw you the hydraulic diagram of that airplane because that's what I had to understand was the hydraulics and the flight control systems and everything. So
you would be out there when they're landing and taking off?
yeah. So when they're taking off, when they're landing, try to stay out of the way. But
I bet that was a rush.
Yeah, when they're taking off, we used to do stupid stuff like who can stand by the jet blast deflection the longest, and the F-14s are up on full power and you're singeing your eyebrows because you don't want to be the guy who gave in.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, stupid stuff.
What was your longest stint on at sea?
I don't know. It was several months for sure. We were forward deployed, so we spent more time at sea than we did in port.
Okay.
So we were. But it was we went Hong Kong and Thailand and Philippines, and I mean, just Australia. I turned 21 in Australia. I mean, it was like
that's cool.
The experiences that I've had. There's no doubt I'd do it all over again.
You wouldn't change it.
Wouldn't change it.
Yeah, I love it.
Did you ever
thanks
have,
for your service.
Yes, thank you for your service.
Absolutely, I
for
did
sure.
it for you too.
Yeah, that's well, we appreciate it. And we know there's a lot of folks that are, and we're thankful for that. What did you ever have any hairy situations?
Yeah, we did. I mean, we had, I watched guys that didn't get a full catapult. We had an airplane that went off the front, and they all dip down when they take off over the front, and then they gain speed as they descend. They pull back up, and next thing you know, you see, and it was two guys that both ejected out of the airplane. But so we literally, they're floating in the water, and you're looking at them as the ship goes by them, waiting until they get enough distance so they can get the helicopter out there to pick them up. And we had an airplane that almost slid off the side, and the crew thought they were going over, so they ejected, and the airplane didn't leave. And it was running, so we had
way.
So there were two guys that managed to figure out a way to climb up there. One guy literally held the guy by his belt and climbed up there, and of course got a medal for that one. I mean, well earned for sure. But yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Nobody lost lives. That's
awesome.
the important part.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And then ended up back here in Springfield.
Yep. Came back in '98. I came home, and Garrett Aviation was out at the airport, and I had been working on airplanes for 4 years, and I went out there and I said, do you guys ever hire people from the Navy? And she said, every time.
Yeah, all day long.
Work right now.
So worked on the shop floor for 6 years. I was doing sheet metal, so it was gutting aircraft interiors and rebuilding brand new interiors and building all the mounts and whatever it takes to to build whatever the customer wanted. We could do anything to an airplane, so we would build everything that they wanted. So.
Say more about Garrett, and then later Standard Aero.
Yeah.
The clientele, because these were all private.
Yeah,
correct?
all private. When I first started there, a lot of the clients were things like a Hewlett Packard or International Paper. It was all corporate airplanes that true businesses that were using these airplanes. Throughout the years, it kind of progressed more towards private individuals that had a corporation that they would fly under. So you'd get some of these, high net worth individuals that would create a corporation, and that would be their flight department. But it meant absolutely nothing to the common person. So if anybody saw and looked up a tail number on an airplane, it would just come back as registered to this corporation. You'd have no idea who it is.
It was, yeah.
So there's a lot of that happens. But yeah, lots of big names, lots of big companies.
Yeah. Well, tell us what you mentioned earlier in an earlier conversation, what you called your work out there.
Yeah.
What you did to somebody's ride.
Oh, it's basically like Pimp My Ride for airplanes.
I love it. It's great because I can wrap my mind around that, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's seen that show somewhere sometime. Yeah.
And it's you typically would tie it in with a large event. It's so when you've got a car, you have to get your oil changed every 3,500 miles, 5,000 miles, whatever it is that you think is the right, the right distance. It's not really hard and fast rule. You can go 10,000 miles if you want to. It's up to you. With an airplane, you can't. You have to go by whatever the legislation is, whatever the rules are. So there's specific guidelines that the industry sets up. So you have to do inspections, and you have to tear those airplanes apart, at different intervals. So whenever they would have the massive inspection where you're completely opening it up, that's the time to do those big events. So a lot of times those airplanes are there for 3 months, 4 months, depending on what it is.
Really?
Yeah. Or sometimes they're in for literally an overnight or a week or two. Sometimes it's a 30-day. All depends on what they're getting done.
Yeah. How long were you in that industry?
Just shy of 25 years, I think.
Okay, yeah. Quite a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So I had one of those epiphany days. I loved what I did out there, but we wore the uniform, and in the summertime you could wear a T-shirt if you wanted to, but it was the standard issue T-shirt, and they were these big dark navy shirts. And I had one of those days. It was the dead of summer, and I saw two guys that were probably late 50s, maybe even in their 60s. Great guys, had nothing against them, didn't think anything bad of them, but I saw them just dripping with sweat, picking up their tools at the end of the day. And I said, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to be that guy when I'm that age. I tons of respect for them, but it just wasn't what I wanted to do. So I started looking for opportunities and moved into a customer service role. They were looking for somebody that could do customer service specifically for refurbishment projects. So I thought, well, that's perfect. That's what I've been doing, you know, because like I said, we did everything. Back then we had the full engine shop, and, you know, we were doing a full interiors, paint shop, avionics, anything that you could do in an airplane, we could do. But I was doing the interior stuff, and I thought, well, it's a perfect fit. And
you had the personality for it, plus you had the know-how, you know, like we're learning a business from the ground up, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah.
So it was a great transition. So I did that I think I did that for about 6 years. Was doing customer service stuff, and like I said, you know, going back to the paper route days, that was my mentality. You know,
Sure.
I love that customer service side of stuff.
Yep.
So from customer service, they actually were looking for an opportunity to do some continuous improvement stuff, and so our general manager had told me, he said, "Hey, your name came up as somebody that we thought might be interested in this role." I said, "Absolutely." So they sent me down to Texas, and I did a bunch of Lean Six Sigma training and got certified and all of that. So thoroughly enjoyed that job. Did that for a few years, but the problem with that job is, as a consultant, it's fantastic because you do that job, you build a company up, and then you move on to the next one. When you're a direct employee, you make all your big hits, and you go, look at all the money I saved, and then you look at your next project and go, hey, look at this one, look at all the money I saved, and the number gets getting smaller and smaller because you've taken out all the big wins, and before long they go, well, now what? What
do you have left?
Yeah, so you almost work yourself out of a job, and not that I think we fixed everything, but the return on investment was dwindling a little bit, and so there was an opening for sales, and I thought this is probably a good move, so I moved into a sales role. And was selling a lot of the aircraft interior refurbishment projects again. So got to meet some great people there. Did that for several years, and then moved back to the operations side, and came back and was leading the team that I had previously worked in. So I was doing the project management side. Did that for several years, and they said, hey, we're kind of thinking about doing a planning department. Do you think you could take over the planning department and help build the front end of these packages? Yeah, it connects together. Let's do that. So they added that, and we built up a planning department. They said, hey, we're also thinking about changing the way we do our scheduling. Do you think you could take over the scheduling department? I said, yeah, it all works. You know, it all makes sense. They connect. Yeah, let's do that. So by the end of it all, my title was, you know, and this, and this, and this, and other duties as assigned. I
love it.
And it was awesome. I enjoyed the role, but I knew it was time to do something different, and got to looking around, and I ended up being recruited by one of our competitors in aviation, and they wanted me to be their COO, and several rounds of interviews there, and that was about the time of the COVID stuff was still kind of happening, and so the interview was it was like a Zoom meeting, and I'll never forget, the guy said something about, Kyle, we're looking forward to having you up here in Canada, and I went. And I was whoa, this is not where we discussed that this role was going to be. And it was kind of eye opening. And we all kind of laughed about it. They said, hey, that's 100% on us. We changed the location of this role. We're sorry that we didn't communicate that. And it was great. I mean, I still, occasionally talk to those guys. They're great people. But it was just, it kind of got me thinking about, they were recruiting me for their COO. Yeah. And so I looked around and thought, man, that really is what my job is. Like I said, it was other duties as assigned. It was multiple roles. But when I really thought about it, it was very similar. It was not the job that I was doing, but the skill set was the same. And I was like, man, it really does make sense. So,
and you understood every part of the process, right?
Yeah, exactly.
From building it, fixing it, maintaining it, planning it, scheduling it. Yeah,
absolutely.
I love that.
It was truly, leading the operations side of stuff.
Yep.
So started looking around and found Troxell's posting. I thought, you know what? I know who Troxell is. Like I said, born and raised in Springfield, so I've known them. Yep. And I thought, I could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I applied for Troxell.
And you decided, in spite of the fact that Mike Alio was still there, you decided
Mike
to
who?
take that role.
I think he resides in Florida.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah.
Thankfully,
no,
exactly.
Mike was a huge proponent when I interviewed. He was big in bringing me on. He's a great guy.
So, although obviously the industries are totally different, is managing the insurance business. I mean, a lot of similarities because you're just dealing with people, right?
Yeah, a lot,
and processes.
A lot, and they actually, they asked me about that in the interview. They said, how do you think your skills would carry over from aviation to insurance? And I said, well, the skill set is the same. We're still looking at things, from an operational perspective, and honestly, there's somewhat of a benefit of bringing in somebody like me who doesn't have the insurance background,
Right.
because I don't come in and go, well, the way I always did it was this, and the way we did it in my last place was this. And
Sure.
so everything kind of, was a little bit of a different perspective. And we said, does that make sense? Why do we do it like that? So it's a lot of asking questions and saying, why are we doing it like that? And why do we do this? How do we do this? And then, well, why do we do it like that? And does that make sense?
Sure.
We haven't made radical changes, but several positive changes, and we got a lot more to make.
So did you bring the Six Sigma with you? Is that part of your management style?
It's the way that my mind works for sure.
Yeah.
Because
I've not been accustomed to that. We have not implemented. I'm not familiar with that, but I heard it's
good stuff, and it's just when you start kind of talking about making continuous improvement stuff, people tend to get worried and they think, oh well, they're going to implement something radically different, or they're going to eliminate people. This is all about a cost saving measure, and it's exact opposite. It's a lot about making your job easier and making it more enjoyable to come into work every day.
Sure.
Like so there's a template that they use called the SIPOC. So it's suppliers, inputs, process, output, customer. So you look at the whole process and you say, where do I get my information? What am I doing with it? What am I building from it, and who am I sending that to? And a lot of times you'll go through those steps and you realize that the data that you're getting from somebody is no longer the data that was originally used when they created that process. So, maybe somebody changed a report. You're still pulling that same report and building this stuff with it. Well, now you're sending it to somebody else. And so you go down the line, you ask them, say, hey, so, Betty, builds this report for you and sends it to you, Susie. So Susie, what do you do with this report? And Susie goes, oh no, that's been wrong for years. I don't even use that thing anymore, right? So, so a lot of that stuff, you find things that are just wasted time, Sure. So you're typically giving people hours back in their day. So
people, processes, and procedures, right?
All day long.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
That's pretty good. When did you go take the role at Troxell? 22?
22. Yep. July of 22.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So how about the insurance industry? I think we do a lot of insurance work at Peerless.
Sure.
See changes all the time. What kind of changes have you seen just over your 3 years or upcoming 3-year anniversary?
Yeah, so the obvious one is the recent stuff is all rate increases, and that's a difficult one because people becoming more price conscious as it moves on, and the thing about Troxell is educate, advocate, protect. That's the way that we operate. Is we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing by our clients all day long. So, we want to make sure that you understand what you're getting for coverage. We want to make sure that we're, insuring you correctly and covering you adequately. I know Chris and I talked the other day. We were talking about there's a difference between, your value of your home from a real estate perspective,
right,
and a value of your home from a replacement perspective.
That's right.
So, are you trying to be insured to sell your home,
right,
or do you want to be insured to replace your home?
Replace it. Yep.
So there's a difference there, And if somebody looks at it and says, "Well, I could sell my home for $300,000. Why am I insured for $5 million?"
Right.
Well, because it's going to cost you $500,000 to build that $300,000 house.
Yeah.
And it could go the other way, right? It's very specific on where you are. There could be times where maybe it's easier to replace a cost or a home, but typically the replacement cost is significantly higher than the market value. So we want to make sure that we insure people correctly, and obviously the premium is based on that value and your coverage amount. So we want to make sure that people understand, yes, your rates are going to go up, but they're going up for a good reason.
Right.
If you and unfortunately, people think, well, they're going up because insurance companies want to make more money.
Right.
And it's really not true. It's you look at what was it, 2023? I think there were like 28 different events that were over $1 billion.
I know.
Yeah.
And then 24, it went down. I think it was 27
instead
of 28.
Much. Yeah.
Right. But that's just the number of those events. That doesn't account for the total volume.
Right.
So total volume wise, 24 was actually a terrible year because there were a lot of significant events that were, they were over $1 billion, but they were way over $1 billion. And you add all that up.
Right.
And then you look at things like, try to do anything. Try to go to a Home Depot or a Lowe's or a Menards or any of these businesses and buy supplies.
I know.
Everything costs more. Well, So now everything costs more to replace the value of your home. So it's it's throughout the whole process. It's really not an industry specific thing where the insurance companies just want to make more money.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I can't remember. It may have been Ian that happened in September 23 down in South Florida. And from that time forward, it seems like there's been one significant weather event after another over those last 2.5 years. And so it's
the fires in California.
Yeah, the fires in California recently.
The big hail damages we had here.
Yeah, here in Central Illinois, the huge cold weather event that happened in December of 23.
Yep.
That was, I think it covered 27 or 28 states. So all that risk has to be spread out across all those insureds, right?
Yeah. And what's interesting is talking to you guys are talking about local events because you guys are in a similar environment where you deal with these.
Yes.
Whereas the actual, the typical consumer, they're constantly thinking about the coasts because that's the stuff that gets the news.
That's right.
The stuff that's on the news is the fires out in California and the hurricanes in Florida and the massive floods that happen. But if you look at the maps of those large events, it's right down the middle of the country. The majority of those events
day-to-day stuff
are in our areas. We just don't think about them as being those common events.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you're good.
I was just going to say, I remember when I was just getting into the restoration business. Back in early 2000s, late 90s, I went to a conference in Palm Springs, and mold was starting to come on a little bit. So it might have been 2003, 2005.
Might have been a questionable place you were staying, Brad.
Yeah, it might have been. It might have been. Yes, that's true. Yeah, I didn't have a lot of money back then. So yeah, but they brought on the vice president of claims for State Farm. And he spoke about mold and what it's doing to the industry and insurance and how insurance companies operate. And he basically said, because he had walked into a very hostile environment, and many of the restoration folks around the country should have certainly treated him a lot nicer because he was coming out there to talk about, and really we were trying to reach out to him and say, hey, this is how we see mold. How do you see mold? But at the end of the day, he said, here's the deal, people. It doesn't matter. He goes, when the insurance companies cannot figure out how to insure that peril, we're out of it. And right now, it's insured. But if you don't watch it, it's not going to be insured. And when it's not insured, your business goes away. And it did in 6 months.
Yeah.
And I mean, there were guys that I thought to myself, man, I didn't understand insurance. Makes total sense now, And so, I mean, when you look across the country at all the stuff going on, there have been a lot of events.
There's a lot more than people think about. Like I said, it's you pay attention to the news and
they spread that risk.
The big stuff.
Yeah.
But Chris, to your point, it's everybody shares it. That's how insurance works.
Exactly. That's how it works.
It's a shared pool of money, and whether you're the guy that had the claim or not, we all share that. And it feels bad if you haven't had a claim. You go, well, I haven't had a claim. Why is my rates going up? Well, on the flip side, if you do have a claim and you do have to replace a $500,000 house, it doesn't cost you $500,000 to do it. Your rates don't go up for $500,000. So it's a shared pool.
Yeah, and while the rates go up, if you don't have the right coverage, it's a lot more painful.
Agreed.
When you have a loss,
and that's,
right?
That's again, educate, advocate, protect. The last thing we want to do is have somebody go for a lower coverage amount because they think that it makes sense, and then when they file a claim, they say, "Wait a minute, I don't have enough." That's the last thing we want. We want people to be protected.
Yeah, and we see that regularly with, or maybe not regularly, but with some regularity at least, folks who have a nice finished basement and they think they have the appropriate coverage for their sump pump to fail. If it should fail, it fails. We have to go in and extract water. If it's a certain category of water, maybe we have to tear out the flooring or the carpet, and all of a sudden they realize in the midst of that event that they only have they have a cap on that that is not enough to cover this beautiful finished basement that they have put into their home.
Yeah, and again that goes back to ensuring that people understand
educating,
the type
advocating.
Of, exactly. You want to make sure that they understand the type of coverage that they have because they're not all the same. Every policy is a little bit different. Even different carriers, write things a little bit differently, and some stuff is covered, some is not. So I mean, you have to really dig in and understand what people need, and then understand how to cover them. And it's you ensure that you're covering them adequately and properly, not you don't do it based on price. The price comes out to what the price comes out to, and we can typically, that's the advantage of working with an independent like Troxell is we have 30, 40 different carriers that we can probably go to depending on what you're looking at. I mean, it's a lot of options. Typically, we can find you one that's lower than the other one.
Yeah.
So it just depends on, what we're trying to accomplish.
So do you have more carriers, less carriers, about the same that you've had in the last 5 to 10 years?
So oddly enough, when I came on board, that was one of the things that I looked at was the number of carriers. And I thought, well, this is too many to manage. We can't adequately manage all of these relationships. We need to pare this back.
Feeding them all.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
So I said, we need to figure out who our priority carriers are, and we probably ought to start paring this back. And we didn't do it immediately. And then everything happened with all these claims, and the rates started taking off. And now, next thing you know, it's been a great thing that we didn't do it because we still have all those relationships.
Options,
yeah. So what I thought was going to be a great idea ended up being a good thing that we didn't act on.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. Do you guys, and maybe it's an industry association, have to watch? I suspect you do, but I don't know the answer. Somebody who really monitors legislation at the federal level and the state level for changes in the insurance industry, requirements, those kinds of things.
So there's an association called the Big I. That's the Insurance Association. So the Illinois branch of that. They have someone who is on their team who was a former lobbyist, and he is tied in. Evan monitors all of that stuff for us, and he's constantly posting updates. He has basically a feed that you can subscribe to that keeps you updated on that, and he'll let us know if there's something that there's a proposed change. He'll let us know, hey, here's something that I think you guys need to be involved in, and we can make sure that we would do some type of a campaign with our staff if we wanted to and voice our opinion and say, hey, we need to write to our legislators and make sure they understand the impact of this. Because, I don't think that we have legislators who are trying to do the wrong thing. Right. But sometimes if they're not in the, deep enough in the weeds, they may not understand the impact on the reverse side of that. So, and that's in every industry. It's not just us.
This looks great over here,
Exactly.
but then when you dig down a little bit below the surface, you realize it's not.
Yeah.
It's offset by
Exactly
all the
right.
other issues that it impacts.
Exactly right. We've got Evan Manning at the Big
okay.
I.
Yeah, we know Evan.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Great guy.
Very good.
Yeah, he comes in every once in a while and gives us an update, but he also provides kind of, like I said, just kind of a subscription service more or less that you can keep updated on things.
Cool. Yeah. Do you see significant changes legislatively on an annual basis, let's say, or is it just
more of an
kind of
annual? Yeah, it depends on what the flavor of the day is too.
Yeah.
There's always somebody who's going to push based on a recent news report, and somebody says, hey, I've got an idea, we're going to go tackle this. So there's a lot of variation in that the volume of that stuff, but it's not like every week we have to make changes to our policies.
Yeah.
No.
Right.
So like in our business, in a lot of industries, there's a lot of private equity money flowing around. I'm sure you guys get hit on quite a bit, or at least some
every day.
It seems like the agents that we know and we've known for a long time. It seems like you guys want to stay independent.
It's 100%.
Yeah. And my question: are you guys in an acquisition mode, or are you always looking around to grow?
Yeah. So the thing that kind of sets us apart is last year we brought on several new shareholders.
Okay.
So and the reason for that was because we want to be an independent. We don't have any desire to be sellouts, and probably a bad way to put that.
No, you're selling out to private equity, which is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
I'm reading a book on it right now. That's exactly what you're doing. You're selling out, and then they dismember your company and try and take the cash out and go bankrupt.
That's exactly what we don't want to do.
It's called Plunder. It's a great book.
So the majority of our board of directors, they're all local people, right? All of our board is local. Most of our employees are local, but all of our board members are local.
Yep.
And what they've said is, look, if we sell out to private equity, we know what happens.
Right.
They're gonna put everything into a call center. Yep. They're gonna get rid of probably 90 and 95% of your staff. Yep. Nobody's gonna have jobs anymore. The service is gonna be terrible. The only one that wins in that scenario are the people that had the stock that got bought out.
Yep.
So they've said, hey, if we do that, now I'm in the grocery store and a client walks up to me and says, hey, I'm glad you can afford, to buy the nice high end food.
Right.
I mean generics because I just got hosed on my insurance, and it's it's an uncomfortable situation. Nobody wants to go through that.
Right.
Nobody wants to do the wrong thing. We're all very involved in the community. That's one of the things that attracted me to Troxell was how community focused they are. It's a fantastic company, but not if you get involved in that PE side of stuff.
Sure.
So to answer the question, we get contacted all day long. And we are always in the mode of looking for other companies. And are we looking to acquire? Yes, but not probably the same way that most people are. So that the reason I bring up the shareholders is that's what we're trying to do is we want to show people that we're committed to remaining independent.
Sure.
So when we go talk to other agencies, we explain to them, hey, we're not here to buy you out and just write you a check and change the sign out front and, you're off into the sunset. We want those people to stick around. So what we look for is the type of agency that we would want to acquire is more of acquiring a partnership. We're not trying to acquire and just build our brand and say, hey, look how big we are. We're looking for the right opportunities where we can help somebody who's, maybe they don't have a perpetuation plan. We didn't have one for a long time. We just implemented that and finally have people where we have the next round who's coming in behind them. So we want to help those people that, maybe it's somebody who's built their own agency. They've been very successful, but now they don't know what's next. They don't have a kid who wants to come in. They don't know who's coming in behind them. We want to help them build that up. So we'll partner with them, bring them in, and then we can bring in more producers with them and say, hey, here's your next guy. You can train him. And here's a great female producer that came in, and here's another male producer, and here's another female. We try to grow that, get some diversity in there, make sure that we can help that agency grow. And then by the time that guy's ready to retire, he's now built an even better place because we've given him the tools and resources to help him do it. So are we looking to acquire? Yes, but it's more of a partnership.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And I suspect when you do that, you guys have to go through some processes to make sure they're a good cultural fit with who Troxell is, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's everybody that we talk to, we have multiple, meetings with them and talk to them, and we want to talk to their people. You don't just look at the books.
Right.
You want to meet the people
who
and
they
understand.
are.
Exactly right. Yeah. Peel back the curtain and talk to people and say, hey, how is your culture? What does work down here? What does work down here or up here or over here, wherever they are? So.
Well, when I think of service, I think of Troxell because oftentimes your agents are the ones that are calling us when we have a claim, water, fire, whatever it is.
Sure.
Where some companies don't necessarily run that way.
Yeah.
They just let it go to the claim center. They let it go to. You have a couple ladies, I believe, in your claims office, maybe more than that. But it just seems like your agents are always out in front of those claims and oftentimes even on site, right?
Yeah, we're trying. Yeah.
And what's a typical day look like for you? Like when you go into the office. I'm assuming I see you in there early because I'm always in here fairly early.
My day starts with turning the lights on.
You beat me into the office, but what's a typical day look like for you in your world?
It's a lot of numbers. Like I said, I'm very analytical, so I'm constantly understanding. I want to know what we're doing well. So everybody kind of laughs at me because I don't want to just see numbers. I want to see charts and graphs because I want to see a trend. I want to know. Show me a number, that's great, but show me what the last number was. Show me what the one was before that. Just that way I understand it. Are we going up or are we going down? Where are we going with this? And so, I run a lot of numbers. It's a lot of, call it firefighting, but, it's a lot of just ad hoc stuff. You can never really predict the day. There's obviously a lot of meetings. We talked about the number of carriers. I have most of those meetings with carriers that come in for those relationships. But it's, we start off every Monday. We do two different types of meetings. So one Monday, we meet with the management team, and we talk about kind of more of a tactical, version of how we're going to do things, and that's we run on the EOS system.
Oh yeah.
So we're we have that L10 meeting with the manager level, and we talk about what's affecting the people and what are we doing right, what are we doing wrong, what do we need to be looking at making some changes on.
Nice.
What issues do we have? What are
Has that been good for your organization?
Phenomenal.
Awesome.
Yeah. We're trying to roll it out this year. We're looking at we want to make sure that we're running the whole business that way, and it's not just something where we sign out front and say, hey, we're an EOS company.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Gotcha.
I want everyone to understand that if someone hears us talk about our rocks that we have. What does that mean? What does a rock mean?
Yes.
And we want them to understand the entire concept of EOS and the whole principles, and and not just understand it. I want them to be involved in it.
Sure.
I want everyone in the company to be able to put something on the issues board and say, hey, here's something I think we need to talk about, and actually, then somebody follows up on that, and it's something that's physically been documented, and we talk about it, we address it, we figure out how to resolve it,
Nice.
and give them that voice.
One of our biggest frustrations, we did the Rockefeller Habits and the one-page plan. It's very similar, I believe, to EOS, but different. Was there were people quick to throw up issues on the board, but never willing to step up to the plate and actually. I'll take ownership of that.
Yeah, let me own that.
I brought that up. I'll own it. I'll hold myself accountable for it. And here's the time frame. So,
and unfortunately, that I'm sure you guys see the same thing. But what you get in most industries is the people that have the most knowledge are the ones doing the work.
Right. 100%.
But they're also the ones who are doing the work. So a lot of times
They don't have time to
They don't
fix
have
the
the time
issue.
to fix
That's
the
right.
issue. But,
Agreed. We ran
but,
into that
But they
too.
also have the best knowledge about how to fix the
That's
issue.
right.
So
Yes.
so you have to be able to make some time for those people to be able to be involved in those projects. And,
Yes.
and we actually did that last year. We said,
Nice.
hey, part of the objectives for everyone is different teams have to come up with different efficiency projects. And it's like I said, it's not, we talked earlier, it's not about trying to figure out how we can do things with less people and get rid of some people and cut heads. It's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
I want to figure out how to make you more productive so that you enjoy coming into work. I want to, I want to make sure that you're the best version of yourself that you can be.
Yeah.
It's easier said than done, but it's it's a work in progress.
Yeah, those are all those are all challenging things.
Yeah.
But if you're not intentionally working on them, they're not going to
Exactly
solve
right.
themselves
Yeah, exactly.
for sure. I heard somebody say this recently when you just mentioned how people feel about their work. We want to make them more productive and enjoy doing their work. And they said the best definition of your culture is how do your people feel on Sunday night?
Yeah, exactly right.
Before they're going to show up to work on
Yeah.
Monday
Are they
morning.
dreading tomorrow morning?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So interesting stuff.
Super Bowl Sunday, Monday after Super Bowl Sunday. Sometimes I'm dreading
Not so
Monday.
good.
I'll be the first to admit that.
Right, yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. Might have been with you watching the Super Bowl too. So,
Probably the reason.
listen, we want to respect your time. Greatly appreciate you coming on. One of the things we always ask folks when we do these interviews is, if you could, I'm not going to ask you your age, but if you could go back and tell your 25 or 30-year-old self something, if you could give yourself advice at 25 or 30 based on your years of experience, what might that one or two pieces of advice be?
I would say just try it. Everybody talks about you have to make your 5-year plan, right? And you should make your 5-year plan and stick with that. If I would have made a 5-year plan, I wouldn't be where I was today because I wouldn't have seen the other opportunities. I wouldn't have gone and done that continuous improvement job. I wouldn't have gone and done the sales role. I wouldn't have done all the different operational stuff. Those were just opportunities that just came along, and I was just willing to try it. And so I think I got lucky that I had mentors that helped me and said, hey, you probably ought to look at that job. Hey, I think you would be great at this. So I had people that helped push me in that direction. But if I didn't have them, I wouldn't be where I was. So I think just trying different stuff, being willing to step outside of your comfort zone, try a different job, learn something new, learn a new skill, try something.
Would you have done anything differently when you look back?
No, I love the way that everything's gone for me. I'm insanely lucky.
Yeah, that's
I mean, my career has been
said.
Yeah.
it's been so fun. I've gotten to meet people, see things, do things. It's a phenomenal experience, and I love where I've landed.
Yep.
But it's taken a lot of luck to get there. I mean, if I didn't have people that pointed me in those directions,
Sure.
I wouldn't be here.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Right. Anybody who says they got
If
there
they
on
weren't
their
trying to
own,
put me in Canada, I wouldn't be here.
but it's so true, right? I mean, anybody who says they got there on their own,
Yeah.
Yeah.
doesn't happen that
Yeah,
way.
and,
It's all the people around us that help us.
We
get
all try
where
to
we
do
are.
that for our people, whether they realize it or not. We're all trying to help, shape people and push them in the right direction. Whether you come out and say, "Hey, I think you should do this." Sometimes it's a little behind the scenes nudging that they may not realize, but you're always trying to do the right thing for your people.
Absolutely.
And that's the example that I've had presented to me. So.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
good.
based on our political thing going on, you'd be in a hostile environment right now if you're working up there.
No doubt.
Being an American.
I probably wouldn't be able to come home for Thanksgiving if I was.
Well, man, thank you for your time.
No,
This
thank
is
you guys.
great.
It was
Thanks
good.
so much. Really
it was
good
good.
stuff.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yep, you bet.
Good to be with you.